Hey, this is LOA Today, the Law of Attraction show. Welcome to LOA Today. My name is Walt Thiessen, and we have a special guest with us today. Fred Cuellar of Diamond Cutters International has agreed to an interview today. And Fred, welcome to the program.
Well, thank you for having me.
Well, let me just give listeners a little idea of your extensive biography and background, because it's really quite impressive. You founded Diamond Cutters International in the 1980s, I believe. What year was it?
Yeah, 85.
85.
Yeah, you're telling everybody that I'm old. Thank you very much.
I would have said that.
I was a 7-year-old prodigy. I started.
I guess that makes me, well, I won't even say what that
Experienced and wise.
Yeah, that's it. Good.
That's it. Those are the words you were looking for.
That's right. But Fred's also an author. He's written 4 books, including #1 best-selling book on diamonds, How to Buy a Diamond. And of all books in print, How to Buy a Diamond is ranked among the top 1%. That's pretty darn good all by itself.
Yeah. You know, if you've ever written anything, and I think everybody on this planet's written something, it's always a little astonishing when people kind of resonate with what you write. So it was neat.
Well, plus diamonds is a topic that people are going to resonate with, so I think you got a good one there.
Well, you know, when I told people if you buy my book, I'll give you a diamond, I figured that was permanent.
Good marketing strategy, Ella.
Well, you know, it's how you package it, man.
I'm not sure I want to pay the cover price, but that's all right. And Fred's also, among other things, a championship ring designer. He's designed Super Bowl rings for the Dallas Cowboys and Denver Broncos. He designed a Stanley Cup championship rings for the New Jersey Devils, Colorado Avalanche, the Detroit Red Wings, and Dallas Stars. Major League Soccer championship rings for the Houston Dynamo and Los Angeles Galaxy, as well as World Championship rings for the New York Yankees. So you've got quite an extensive sports background as well.
Yeah, basically, I'm a nerd who couldn't play sports and figured that if I made a neat ring for all the jocks, that they would include me.
Did it work?
It worked.
Oh, good.
It worked.
Congratulations.
Thank you. There's more than one path up the mountain.
Well, that's one of the reasons we wanted to have you on the show, to talk about the path that you took to get up the mountain and what those other paths are that you're referring to that are the ways to get up the mountain. Because since our show is about law of attraction, one of the things people want to attract, of course, is wealth and prosperity and
Sure.
and so forth. So we figure, well, why not go to an expert? I mean, we're going to do our own version of Napoleon Hill here and interview people who've already got there.
That's great.
So when you got started, first of all, when you decided to go into the diamond cutting business and the diamond business in general, what motivated you and what made you think you could actually succeed in it? And then how did you get there?
Well, first of all, diamonds weren't even on my radar as a kid.
What was?
Money. And I didn't see diamonds as part of that. As a kid growing up, I didn't pay attention to diamonds or jewelry. But I did realize early on, because I remember one time I wanted a new pair of Adidas. And I went to my mom and I said, Mom, I need a new pair of Adidas. And she said, well, you know, if you took better care of the tennis shoes we buy you, they would last longer and you wouldn't have to come to me all the time. And I said, well, Mom, you know, if they look new, that's not cool. So when I get them, I got to kind of tear them up a little bit,
right?
So that they look cool, but then they don't last as long when I tear them up.
So things haven't changed, have they?
Yeah. And so then she says, well, I'm sorry. You know, we're not made of money. You're going to have to live, you know, with the tongue of the bottom part of your Adidas hanging out, flapping until, you know, we have a little bit more money. I said, Mom, I happen to know that you've got plenty of money. And she said, oh, really? And how would you know that? And I said, and I went to a drawer and I pulled out a box of checkbooks. And I said, you have plenty of these checks. I see how it works. You hand someone this piece of paper, and they give us stuff. and you've got tons of these. So to deny your son what he wants when there's no shortage of these pieces of papers, and they go, do you really think they want that piece of paper? Oh, yes, I said. I know they do, because they keep giving us cool stuff for them. So as long as you can keep getting those pieces of paper, we're in business. So this will show you how naive I was. Obviously, at some point, I got, what had to happen, what banks were, money was. But at a very young age, I was well aware that I lived in a family that was on a budget, and that you worked hard and you saved for things. And so the idea of a savings and investing, I was like, wow. And so, from an early age, from shining shoes door to door, from selling things, I realized that, gosh, okay, I see how the world works. I want some nice things, and if I need money, then I got to get a job and that kind of stuff.
You actually shined shoes?
Yeah, I shined shoes. I went door to door, and because my father was in the military, and people in the military always had to have their shoes shined. So I would go door to door on the base, the Air Force base my father worked for, and I would with my little shoe shine kit, and I would ask if they would want to shine their shoes. Now, this went pretty good until one of the people called my mother and told my mother that I was doing a phenomenal job on shining the front of the shoes, but I was doing a lousy job on the heels. And they wanted me to come back and finish what I had started. And my argument to my mother was, well, the front of the shoes is the first impression. That's all that matters. Once you're leaving, do we really care what's going on back here?
How old were you at this time?
9 maybe.
Okay.
Yeah. And she said, no. You start something, you finish it. Probably the first time I ever heard the quote, I long to achieve a grand and noble task, but it is my chief duty that I accomplish small tasks as if they were grand and noble. And my reaction to my parents who said that to me was, who said that? and they said, well, it was a person who was blind. It was a person that was deaf. And I went, oh. And so you start to understand at a very early age what appreciation is, what compassion is, what gratitude is. And when you talk about the law of attraction, that's all that stuff. At the end of the day, love and compassion, these are these incredible magnets that attract people into our life. No different than, I might add, than sadness and grief and loathing and contempt and pessimism and shame and so, yeah, I didn't know it then. I'm a little bit more aware of it now, but that there is this magnetic attraction, electromagnetic attraction, or that is tied to these emotions we have. When Plutchik talked about the Plutchik circumplex, and he tried to understand how the left hemisphere and the right hemisphere of the brain talk to each other, how the mind-body connection happened, and how we resonate and interact with other people, it was some pretty wild stuff. But to answer the other question, which I drove too long to answer, was basically when my father was coming back from tour from Quito, Ecuador, we had seen a show on 60 Minutes called Beat the Dealer, which is based on a book called Beat the Dealer by Dr. Edward Thorp, and it was a plus-minus count for blackjack. And I liked mathematics, still do. I like physics, still do, like chemistry. And so my reaction was, what? There's a book that'll teach you how to count cards so you can go into a casino so that you know when to bet a lot and when not to bet a lot so that the odds are in your favor so you can win money. And so quite honestly, diamonds were not on the radar whatsoever. It was this idea that I saw my parents living a very smart, frugal life where they lived within their means, and I was this rambunctious, spoiled little brat who wanted more things and somehow believed that things were the key to happiness. And wow, was I so wrong. But I'm young, so I'm allowed to be wrong. And I would be wrong many times in my life, thank goodness. And then having, gone through this idea that if I have money, I will have happiness, and I can have things, and I can have stuff, and all this kind of stuff. I think that's what all led me on the particular path that I ended up on. And then when I was at Texas A&M, after spending 5,000 hours practicing blackjack, and I was going to, go to the casino and be this big, rock star, this 007 kind of guy, and meeting a young lady there who said, "You're going to do what with your life?" I said, "Well, honey, I'm going to be a mathematician that uses his math to enable myself to win money at a casino at blackjack." She said, "No, you're not." And when I was young, and I've already noted that I was geeky, and I think anybody who looks at me now will realize there's a geek there. I joke with people that I have to work out so I look like I don't work out. Yeah. So I'm not 100% convinced. I don't know if there's a God or not, but I do believe that he has a parts problem every now and again, because I think in 1963 when he decided to make me, I think clearly there was a parts problem, and he said, "Okay, let's go to the recycle bin. What can we kind of throw around, and let's slap this guy together. We got to stay on point. We got to stay on quota. Flat feet."
You're basically a factory second, is what you're saying.
Yeah, I guess so. With my flat feet and my non-athletic body. But that's okay. But anyway, so to answer your question, it was at A&M while I was pursuing a career as a professional blackjack player, meeting a woman who told me that I would not do that I got a part-time job working at Gordon's Jewelry in College Station, Texas. And being a systems analyst, I looked at how the jewelry store business was a business and how they operated, and had been operating for years, and went, this makes no sense. And literally rewrote a new business model for how diamonds could be purchased in the United States and abroad.
So it sounds like the experience you had with Gordon Jewelry, first of all, it sounds like you got it almost by mistake, almost by chance. It wasn't something you were looking for.
Oh, yeah. But you the word chance, I think, is an interesting word. Chance and luck, I think those are interesting words. I honestly believe there is a serendipity to life. When they asked Leonardo da Vinci what was the greatest thing he learned while he was alive, they asked him this on his deathbed. His answer was, "Experience does not err. It is judgment that errs in promising itself results." And I remember reading that and reading it again and memorizing it, and I was so overwhelmed by it. And I realized that, wow, if I'm experiencing something, it's because I was meant to experience it. I was meant to live it. I was meant to learn from it. I don't have a crystal ball. All of these expectations, that sadness in many cases, and depression and all these things were guessing what you think was going to make you happy, instead of realizing, hey, you made this moment, own it.
Right.
Now, if there are parts of this moment that aren't exactly right, that don't feel good, fine, take those out. But realize that you made them. Now, what are you going to do to change the next moment so that you can be that next authentic version of yourself that you want to be? Because we're always, obviously, work in progress.
Okay.
Agreed.
So just wanted to go back a second again to your experience at Gordon Jewelers.
Yeah.
You talked about how, as a systems analyst, you kind of evaluated the way their business model worked and realized that it could be done better. Can you shed some light? What did you come up with that you saw was an opportunity to change it?
Look, here's what didn't make sense to me. So the first thing I do is I'm in there, and I'm like, wow, this is really expensive mall space. I said, why do we spend so much money to be here? Isn't there space that's less expensive? They say, no, we have to be a place where there's traffic. And I'm like, well, if we have a really great mousetrap, if we've built the better mousetrap, it shouldn't make a difference where we are. People will come and find us. And they're like, look, jewelry's jewelry. It's an impulsive kind of thing. We need to be a place where there's a lot of traffic where we can get impulsive shoppers. I didn't like the idea of that. I didn't like the idea that the only way you were going to sell jewelry was to sell it to impulsive people who maybe, if they had a chance to think about it, may not actually buy that thing. And then, so they're expensive space. The other thing that astonished me is I would watch how they had meetings, usually twice a year, and they would guess what the public wanted. I mean, guess. Because obviously, as you know, there's billions of different types of jewelry that can be made.
Right.
If you figure that there's 118 elements in the periodic table, and from those elements we can make everything that we know, wow, when it comes to jewelry, there's, you can't even put 1% of the possibilities in a jewelry store because it's a brick and mortar building and there's a limited amount of space that you could put in there. And so they guess. And what I would find is that on the good years, on the really, really good years, they would guess about 50% correct and 50% not correct. That was the good years. And then that 50% that was not correct, they would end up having to sell that stuff at a discount or a loss, and that would eat away at the profit they made on the 50%. And so at the end of the year, they were always broke.
Mm-hmm.
And then they would repeat the process over and over and over again. Look, I've learned that you're going to bang your head against a few walls. But at some point, you got to realize, man, this isn't making much sense. Or if I opened a door, and every time I opened the door, someone punched me, at some point I would stop opening that door.
Right.
I'd find a window, I'd find something else and stuff. And then what I noticed was that because of the way it was set up, you had lots of people standing around jewelry cases. By the way, the inventory costs were quite high. So you had all these people standing around jewelry cases with Windex bottles and just cleaning cases and talking to each other and stuff like that. That was, by the way, a Windex bottle being squeezed, just in case you didn't know that. Don't ask me to do any other impressions. I mean, I'm not bragging about my Windex bottle deal.
It was actually pretty good.
No, thank you so much. And so all of these people, all on the clock, at any moment, and they never got it right. One minute there'd be a rush and there wasn't enough salespeople, or there was one guy walking in and 7 hungry salesperson that were on commission going, that's my guy, which would scare the customer and they would leave. So I thought, all right, get out of this space, make that less expensive. Custom cut the diamonds, custom make the jewelry. That's less expensive. I mean, figure every single way to remove an expense so at the end of the day, you can deliver 2 of 3 things. The price, the best possible price where you can make a living and the customer's really happy with the price, and phenomenal quality. Now, this was going to obviously take more time because the jewelry store was designed for an impulse shopper. Well, it's interesting. If you look at the percentage of couples that get a divorce that bought their jewelry impulsively or would be described as impulsive people, they have an 83-84% divorce rate. It's pretty high. But the people who say, no, love is patient, let me take my time, let me think about it, let me shop around, I'm not in a hurry all the time, well, these kinds of people figure that's my customer. The customer who says, hey, I'm willing to wait for the souffle. And so because I remember when I told people that I was going to be by appointment, people wanted to see me. Just like a doctor or a lawyer, you had to see me by appointment. We would supply jewelry store accounts. That would be a different division of our company. But when it was dealing with private clientele, no different than a doctor, no different than a lawyer. You set up a time and appointment so you know exactly how many people to have to handle the schedule and that kind of stuff. And then when the person would come in, you would sit there and you would show them the diamonds. You would have an art department. You would create a piece of jewelry. And so in a way, to be able to create a generic version of what you would find at the high-end stores, the Cartiers, the Graffs, the Winstons, the Van Cleef & Arpels. My belief was that if I could deliver the same quality diamond that you might see at Cartier's for, let's say, $50,000, but it'd be available for $10,000 for me for the identical thing, but without the fancy brand name, that people would beat a path to my door. And sure enough, a few presidents later, championship rings, the accounts that we've got has helped prove that, yeah, people there are people out there that are willing to wait for good quality.
Now, to what extent has your revised model been adopted by the rest of the industry?
Oh, no. What's called upstairs jewelers are now everywhere. Yeah, 20% of jewelers worldwide offer off of my business model, 1 out of 5.
Wow. That makes you a real innovator for sure.
Well, thank you so much.
I was thinking of our local jewelry store and thinking they certainly have not adopted your model, because a couple of times when I've gone in to see about repairs to a piece of jewelry, exactly what you said is what I saw was, it's a small store, but there were 3 or 4 people standing around greeting you as you walked in, and nobody else in the store. And scratching my head thinking, well, how do they stay in business?
Yeah.
And it must be, they get the rush for the holidays or graduation or certain Mother's Day, I don't know what else. Yeah. But a lot of the time they stand around doing nothing.
Yeah, twiddling their thumbs,
As you were describing the situation of the mall, where they wanted to be in the mall for the traffic, and they're basically trying to treat it, as you say, as an impulse buy, which I don't think I've ever seen anyone buy a diamond on an impulse. But we'll leave that one aside for a moment. Just the idea of traffic and foot traffic, and where's the traffic going to come from? You obviously had some idea of where your traffic was going to come from because you weren't setting up in a visible location. So how did you attack that problem?
Well, there was a book, and I'm not going to remember the exact name of it, although I probably could look it up. I remember the book as being something called The Art of Persuasion. I'm going to quickly look at my Kindle and see what the name of the book is as I continue talking. But there was a book that I had read, and it talked about, let me see here, I'm looking, the psychology of persuasion is called Influence, and the book was written by Robert B. Cialdini, Ph.D., Cialdini, Ph.D. Basically, it's on influence. Warren Buffett said it was one of his 10 favorite books, and I don't disagree with him. It's a work of art. What the book talks about is that there are 8 elements that persuade people to do the things that they do, and one of those elements is contrast. If I want to know if a diamond or a suit or a banana is a good deal, I have to compare it to another suit or banana or diamond or something. So someone says, hey, this banana is a good deal for $5 compared to what? Well, here's a banana for $20. Yeah, okay. I guess compared to the $20 banana, the $5 banana, that seems like a good deal. But in the book, the author quickly found out that when they studied the people that were the most successful businessmen, there were these 8 elements that showed up time and time and time and time again. And the first one was contrast, and then there was the law of reciprocation, and then reciprocation concession, commitment, consistency, social proof, likability, authority, and scarcity. That where those 8 elements were present, businesses were super successful. And think about it. When you go to a restaurant, how important is it that they're consistent on the quality of their food?
Right.
If every time you go there, one day it's good, one day it's not so good, you're probably not going to go there anymore. And it's interesting, when you talk about the law of attraction, I mean, the law of reciprocation is kind of that. One of the very first things I learned in life, which was from a book called How to Get People to Do Things by Robert Conklin. I think I read it when I was a teenager. The essence of the book was, to the degree that you satisfy other people's needs, your needs will be satisfied. Most people have it backwards. They think, hey, if you make me happy, then I'll do something for you. Yeah, but everybody ends up around with a big, long wooden spoon in their hand, and no one's feeding anybody. No one's taking care of anybody. And so it's, no, I've got to feed you. I've got to satisfy you. And when I do, then it comes back. The boomerang comes back and stuff like that. So I remember one time when I was reading the book, because I go back and read books every now and again, and I always discover something new. There was a great example of reciprocation concession. I don't know if your audience is aware of, you guys are aware of what that means per se, but it's the idea. But it's the idea that when you ask for something, you don't get it. Kind of like what the Democrats and Republicans are doing right now, and then you have to make a concession, and a concession is a gift. And once you make a concession, they're more likely to make a concession. If you don't make a concession, they won't either. But it was so cute. They had a Dennis the Menace cartoon, I remember in the book, and it was adorable. Dennis the Menace comes to his mom and he says, "Mom, can I have a pony?" And his mom goes, "No, you can't have a pony." And he goes, "Oh, well then can I have a cookie?" and mom goes, "Well, all right, I guess that seems reasonable." And hands him a cookie, and as he's walking away, he goes, "Who knew an invisible pony was the key to cookies?" So at some point, I was keenly aware that being a non-Jewish person in the diamond industry, raised a Catholic, more spiritual than I am than anything else now, that nobody was going to beat a path to my door if I didn't find a way to be very, very good at what I did, to be an authority, which is one of the 8 elements in the book on persuasion. And so I studied hard. I learned everything I could about diamond lattices, about resonance cavities, amplification effects, optical amplification of photons and diamonds. And I said, I have to take what's already there and I have to take it to another level. I have to start another conversation. And if I do that, then people will find me. I'll write about it and stuff like that. And I think that's helped dramatically. I don't know that I'd be on your radio show or on the television shows that I've been on if at some point someone didn't say, "Hey, this guy's one of the top diamond experts in the world." That adds a lot of credibility. Not to mean that we should just believe all the people that have a bunch of letters or titles behind their names. We should obviously question everything, but at some point I do believe there is a place in this planet for experts.
As you're describing all of that, it's really quite remarkable to me, comparing it to all that I've been hearing, particularly over the last year or so as I've been studying the latest in online marketing.
Yeah.
How similar the terminology is, not just the concepts, but the terminology is so similar between what came out in that book, some 20, 30 years ago, and what's currently being preached. It's just remarkable. I guess it proves that the good concepts really don't go away, but I'm just astonished at how, it's almost word for word. That's really remarkable.
Yeah,
and for a book I didn't even know about.
Yeah, Napoleon Hill, I think, is a great example of it. This idea of an individual that says, wait a second, instead of trying to make a product that I like and that I believe in and convince other people to want and like it, how about I just ask my audience what they need and give them that? There's a brilliance in that. Now, obviously, there's another level of, gee whiz, how about I create something that the customer doesn't even know they need yet? But now you're talking about a level of mastery that very few people cross.
Yeah, absolutely true. Okay, so you basically took this as your model. How did you end up applying it? In other words, it's one thing to read the abstract ideas. It's another thing to actually turn them into reality, as anyone who's ever gone into business knows. How did you do it?
Well, what I did was I took all the money that I made from working for other people, put it all together, and it was the bright sum of about $70,000. And I went, that's it, I'm rich. This is all the money I'm ever going to need to run a diamond company. I might add today, to open the door of a brand new diamond cutting house, you need $200 million.
Wow.
And that's just open the door. Then you better make sure that within another 12 months you have another $200 million, and then you better make sure that you have about another $500 million worth of line of credit to be able to get things that you can't afford to inventory right now.
I guess we're not going to be opening a diamond house, Louise.
That's quite all right. I like emeralds better.
Well, no, what people are doing, though, and we see it all the time, look, personality comes from the word persona, which means mask, which means we put on, a lot of people put on these masks to act like there's something that they're not. Look, I mean, what's the old joke? You might as well be you because everybody else is taken. Well,
I never heard that one before. I like it.
Probably Will Rogers or somebody said that.
Sounds about right.
But it's genius. But we have very few people that are following that advice. Everyone's trying to be something that they're not, trying to be something that they think will impress other people, and in doing so, there's an inherent part of our brain and our DNA when we meet and or see something that's fake, that's not right, that's not 100% natural. Our bodies reject it.
Yeah.
And so when you have these people who say, I can afford a mall space, I can afford a little tiny box, and I can put jewelry that's not mine, put it on Memo and stuff like that, and convince people that I'm super wealthy and stuff like that, and then they wonder why it doesn't go well. These people who lease cars, lease furniture, lease houses, and I'm like, who are you trying to impress? And the answer actually ends up coming back to themselves. They're obviously trying to impress themselves because at some point they never took the time and the hard work to get to know who they were. So anyway, like I said, I started out with $70,000 and got my office, started doing a little bit of advertising on the radio, started working on my How to Buy a Diamond book, and in short order was out of money. And I made the classical error that everybody makes in going into business, assuming that I would make money from day one. You know, that at the end of the first day, there would be a tear dripping down from one eye as you took that dollar and framed it into a frame and you put it up and said, well, that's the first of many. And there was no dollar to frame at the end of that first day because I was in the hole. And every day thereafter, because of the expenses and stuff, I was spending so much time and money looking like I was wealthy that I was broke. And if it wasn't due to a serendipitous event that happened in 1985, I would have been just another guy, another statistic who started a company, had an idea, didn't go anywhere. But I remember it was a Saturday afternoon. I'm about 6 or 7 months into my business, and I'm out of money, or I'm short to be out of money. I'm about to be 30 days late on my rent at my place, and I didn't have any employees. It was just me. I did have a receptionist that I hired every now and then to answer the phone for some different things. And I remember I was sitting in my office, and I couldn't believe that God – you notice how God always shows up when you're in trouble.
Oh, yeah.
When you're doing great, you know
it's all you.
Yeah, it's – hey, boy, did I do a great job. But when things go south, God, why did you do this to me? You know? So
that's how that works.
So someone needs to write a book called God, the Ultimate Fall Guy. So anyway, I'm having this conversation with God and blaming him for everything. And I said, and then at some point, you know, the moment I'm like, I don't believe it. I don't believe you gave me this idea. I don't believe that I'm wrong. There's something here. I'm missing something here. I said, I'm not leaving this office till I figure out what I'm doing wrong because I'm obviously doing something wrong. And so I focused on what was wrong, not instead continuing to lie to myself about how right I was. I meet so many people that when you point out something that they're not doing well or it is wrong, they want to fight you. They want to argue with you about how right they are. You should be thanking people who criticize you and say, I mean, they're doing you a favor. Do you really want to walk around all day with parsley in your teeth? No. You want someone to point that out and say, you know, I don't think you really want that there. I don't think that's a fashion statement you were looking for. And so as I sat there, I said, okay, stop with the idea of convincing myself how right I was. Something's wrong. Let's focus on that. Forget the needle of success. Let's focus on the hay or the noise that's not working out. And I started going through every scrap piece of paper, every phone call, trying to figure out, what needed to be thrown out, what was not essential. And I came across a little note from a couple, I don't even know if they're alive now, called Glenn and Martha Vargas. They were teaching gem cutting at the University of Texas at Austin. And they had made an offer to me that would I be interested in going to the Wawa Mountains of Utah to look for red beryl, which is a red emerald.
Wow.
Speaking of emeralds, it's the only place on the planet you can find it. It's called Big Spite, which is, I guess, more of a technical word for it. But red emeralds is a little bit more exciting. And the mine there had been kind of depleted, but the brothers that owned the mine said, hey, they would allow people, if you pay $10,000, for a weekend shot, that they would allow people to come up there and strip mine and try to find red beryl. And so I thought to myself, okay, well, let's really think positive here. I hand these guys $10,000. I go there. I hit the jackpot. I find a big bag of red beryl. It's worth millions of dollars, and I'm out of debt, and my company continues. Perfect plan. That really was my plan. So now I thought, where am I going to get $10,000? So I had one backup credit card left, and sure enough, its limit was exactly $10,000.
Sure.
So I'm serious. If it had been $9,000, I don't know that I'm here. It was the exact amount, and so I got my ticket. Now I started to think about that. You know what? I knew nothing about mining, and that I better hire somebody to go with me to help me figure out where to look for this stuff once I get over there for this 3 or 4 days that we dig. And so I hired a guy, and I talked this geologist into working for me on taking 50% of the take of what we found. Mm-hmm. And while we were on the plane to Vegas, because we flew to Vegas, and then from Vegas we drove over to Utah. We were going to rent a truck there. On the way over there, he turns to me and says, you know what? You're a nut. There's no way we're going to find red beryl there in 3 or 4 days. Either you pay me for my time, or I'm catching the flight back. I'm not coming with you. Now, I have no money. So I said to him, look, I can't afford to pay you this, that, and the other. And he says, I don't care. I said, but think about it. Would you really want? I said, how much money do you want? He said, I want $10,000. He said, he pulls out a napkin, says, sign this piece of paper that says you're going to pay me $10,000. I don't care about the 50%. 50% of nothing is nothing. All I care is about $10,000. I want a guarantee. And I'm thinking to myself, well, if we don't find anything, I'm going to be bankrupt. So what does it hurt to sign a napkin that says, So I signed the napkin and said, okay, here's $10,000. This is our new agreement. We went there and found $750,000 worth of red emeralds.
Oh, my God. In 3 days?
Yeah.
Oh, my God.
It sounds like it would be unusual. Is that unusual?
Yeah. Yeah, it's kind of like winning a big lotto or something.
Mm-hmm.
It shouldn't have happened. It shouldn't have happened.
Why do you think it happened?
Because I'm supposed to be here doing what I'm doing.
Right. Right.
It's quite a story. I mean, basically, it's the classic story. You're on your last leg. You run out of legs.
Oh.
You place your last bet and you go all in and you win.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I've been very fortunate like that many times. I've come back from cancer, spinal meningitis as a child,
mm-hmm.
A stroke. So I don't know. I don't know if someone up there doesn't like me and has lousy aim. and I just keep hoping that they don't know where their readers are, But I think if I keep moving, I'm safe.
It's hard to hit a moving target. Is that the idea? Interesting business model. Wow. I mean, I'm not even sure how I'd begin to replicate something like that. But okay, you finally scored your stake, so you could keep.
No, but I think to keep it simple is I did everything wrong. At the beginning, I bought furniture I couldn't afford to buy. I bought desks I couldn't afford to buy. I was even in an office building I couldn't afford to be in. I had business cards that were way too nice. Instead of just being honest with people and saying, look, I'm a little tiny guy, and I buy small amounts of rough, and I can't help most people, but there are some people I can help, and I can probably get you something really pretty that you'll be happy with if you trust me. And I think if I had just done that, and then as I made money, slowly start to buy the desks and buy the phones and the better location. But my ego really wouldn't allow me to be in my garage. My ego wouldn't allow me, to do it from my coffee table. And the ones that make it are the ones that realize, hey man, I'm just going to shoot it straight. I'm going to tell people this is my idea. This is what I can do for you. I'm not greedy. I want to make a fair amount of money, and just take it step by step. The reason we get from the first floor to the second floor, if we're taking the stairs, is because someone was clever enough to realize we're not going to take it in one big step. And if we try, we're going to keep falling down. Someone realized, no, if we set a bunch of little small steps up to the second floor, most people will be able to get up.
There are a lot of people who attempt to go into business, still a relatively small percentage of the overall population, but nevertheless a significant number. And we know what the statistics are. Most of them doesn't work out, but
right.
Most of them try to go in with more modest means than what you did. There are some, of course, who do try to be flashy and so forth, but I think an awful lot of people do try to do it the more modest way, and yet they don't make it. Any ideas on why?
Well, I remember this guy came up to me one time, and he said to me, Fred, I've got this great idea. And I'm like, okay, well, what's the idea? He says, how in all these office buildings, they have plants? I'm like, yeah, I've heard of plants. And he said, well, not everybody wants to maintain their plants. So they have services that come and they put the plants in, and when the plants die, they take them out, and then they water them, take care of them. And I go, dude, it's not a great idea. He goes, no, listen. No one's doing it for fresh flowers. I've looked. He said, I'll go out there and put fresh roses and these beautiful fresh flowers, not plants. And no one else is doing it. I'll make a killing doing it. Now, what I wanted to tell the guy was, do you really think you're the first guy to think of this? Do you think there's a reason why nobody's doing this? Do you know how hard it is to keep flowers alive? I mean, they die every few days. You're going to keep running out giving them fresh flowers? How much money can you possibly make? The point was, this guy had this idea, but it wasn't new or novel. And nobody likes to be wrong. So instead of doing his homework and checking to see how many companies had ever been started using that idea that went out of business, he didn't do that. And then he didn't check to see how hard it is to keep playing. He thought of everything in best case scenario instead of everything in worst case scenario. It's interesting. In successful companies, what you find is there's more order than there is chaos. In new companies, you find that there is more chaos than there is order. But there's always some order. The question is, can the order live long enough before the chaos snuffs it out? And that's where making sure you have enough bank, you have enough savings. And you say to yourself, all right, what is everything that could possibly go wrong? People aren't asking themselves the right questions before they start their businesses. They're just assuming everything goes perfectly right. I meet these guys who are a year into their businesses, 8 months into the business, and they said, Fred, I never thought that used stove would go out, and I never thought that I would get a tax bill, and I never thought that my employees would all quit. I never thought, why didn't you? Why didn't you think about that? Why didn't you think about the fact when you bought a house in a floodplain that maybe sometimes it floods? There's probably a reason why that property was so cheap. But the thing about great ideas is we attach ourselves and our souls to our ideas. And so we don't like to question ourselves. Instead of realizing our ideas, our brainchilds, the things that we create, they're not us. They aren't us. They are things we created. And as soon as we can understand that and understand that they're separate from us, then we can take the criticism. Then we can retool them. We can make them better. I'll give you an example. Have you ever heard of a company called Jawbone?
No.
They make headphones and stuff like that, wireless headphones.
Okay.
And they came up with a device about a year ago called Jawbone Up. It was a rubber bracelet you put on your wrist, and it would talk to your iPhone or your iPad, and it would tell you how you slept last night, how much REM sleep you got. It would talk. It would take information from your body, and it would tell it to your tablet or your iPhone. This was going to be revolutionary. Eventually, it's not doing it yet. Eventually, it would tell you your blood pressure. Eventually, it would tell you, did you have too much sodium? It would tell you. But the main thing was, am I moving enough? Am I getting enough exercise? Am I sleeping enough? Am I eating too much? There was going to be this magical, cool bracelet. And all the techies loved it. And money came pouring in so that this thing could be built. But they underestimated how tough people would be on the bracelet. And they also underestimated that it really wasn't waterproof, and that people would shower with it and it would get wet, and water got inside the technology, and sure enough, one by one, all their little bracelets started dying. And the CEO had to tell everybody, I'm sorry, we're going to give everybody their money back, and we're going to retool.
Wow.
And they lost millions on this. Well, on November, this is November, about a couple weeks ago, they relaunched again. And they got a winner now because it's on my wrist. And it's a phenomenal thing. But it's funny. Most people don't understand you can't recognize a mistake until you make it.
Right. Well, and you make a good point. If you detach from your idea that it's not you, then there is less fear in making a mistake. So many of us grew up with, if you make a mistake, you're wrong, you're stupid, you're a failure, that the people around us attached the idea to our personality or our being, so that we became frightened to take the risks.
Yeah.
And so many.
Oh, totally. Yeah.
And what we're hearing with law of attraction a lot of times is, if you want big rewards, you've got to take a big risk, or even, just a risk. And being able, and I know I struggle with it, that it's okay to do that, and the idea will fail. I didn't fail, the idea failed.
Yeah.
That I'm still a good person. I haven't lost my sense of me.
Yeah, exactly.
And a mistake, I had somebody along my history break that word down into two words, a mistake, like in the movies. So you learn from it and you take over. You take it over. And that oftentimes you have to do it several times or many times, but you're learning as you're making your mistake, but it's not about you personally.
Yeah. And I think if we can depersonalize the creative process, if we can start to understand that no one's first draft is perfect, and that after you make your first draft, you look for the mistakes, you remove them, and then you do the second draft, and then you look for the mistakes, then you do the third draft and the fourth draft. But this idea, it's interesting. People in baseball understand it. They understand that, a guy that fails 60 or 70% of the time is considered a Major League Baseball player.
Right.
A guy who strikes out 7 out of 10 times at bat, wow, we call that guy a hero. He's batting 300. When was the last time that you had somebody that was a Ted Williams that was batting 400? I can't think of somebody. And even Ted Williams failed 6 out of 10 times. I remember one time I was at a fair, and there was a young boy who had a little basketball, and he had to shoot this little tiny hoop to get the big animal. And you paid $1. All you had to do was make one shot. And he took a shot, missed, paid $1, took a shot, missed. But everything was always riding on that one shot. And I finally said to him, let me ask you a question. You're putting too much pressure on yourself. Do you really want the stuffed animal? And he says, yes, I do. And he says, I'm going to stay here all day till I get it. I said, then give the man $10. He goes, why? Because I'm going to give you some chance for mistakes. It'll take the pressure off you. Give him $10, you'll get 10 shots out of it. Knowing you got 10 shots out of it, and all you have to do is make 1 out of the 10, you'll make it. But if every single time you go up there, it's all win or lose, that's too much pressure, you'll keep missing. He paid the man $10, and he actually made 3 out of the 10 shots.
Wow.
He walked away with 3 animals. And he said, sir, thank you so much. I said, you won because you made room for mistakes.
Yeah.
Wow. That is a terrific story. I mean, just really terrific.
And it's something, I like the idea, and to keep that in the back of my head, that you have to leave room for the mistakes.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's go back to your story.
Sure.
You wrangled a $750,000 payday out of a nearly abandoned jewel mine.
Yeah.
Against all odds.
Yeah.
What happened next?
Well, then after that, I came back, paid off all my bills, and looked in the mirror and probably one of the first times I'd really used the word lucky. I don't really use the word luck anymore because I think it disowns what you've done. I think it disowns when someone says, boy, I was really lucky. No, man, you were a hard worker. You want to use the word blessed, use the word blessed, but don't strike it up to luck because you don't take ownership of your accomplishment when you say a word like lucky. But
right.
I thought to myself, geez, I'm lucky. I didn't know the lesson of use the word blessed instead of luck. And so I thought, I may never achieve anything great like this again. So I took the nicest, most valuable piece that I got, gem sample, donated it to the Smithsonian Institute, and said, even if one day I'm on the street selling pencils, if someone's at the Smithsonian Institute, there will be my donation and my contribution to the world so people will know that I've been here. So I did those things and then slowly went about going to work. Eventually, by 1991, 6 years later, I would write the How to Buy a Diamond book, and that changed everything. I'm not going to lie. Once that book was written, once it was published, once it got out there, and I kept trying to do what I think the law of attraction is tied to, this idea of that the world must balance. There must be symmetry, the law of opposites per se. So I always broke the symmetry. I was always trying to figure out how to give a customer more for every dollar that they gave me instead of less. I wanted to give them the baker's dozen. So when they walked away from me, they said, wow, that was a great experience. I wanted to create a raving fan. And I just figured, I'm not a day trader. I'm in this for the long haul, the long tail approach. Make a little bit of money, don't live above my means, take 20% of the money that I make. If every dollar that I make, it's not mine, that's for a future version of Fred, 65-year-old Fred. Take another 10% for emergencies. And just, my wife would say that I'm the world's biggest penny pincher, but who's the first guy to the South Pole? Munson, I think. He had a famous quote where he said, there is no such thing as bad weather, just inappropriate clothing. and I really like that. There is no such thing as a bad business climate or a bull market or a bear market. There's just poor planning. And so get that. If you really want to be a pessimist, you're either in a storm, just leaving a storm or a storm is approaching. And if you understand that, you'll have the type of things that you'll need: savings, support, staff. There'll be enough redundancy that you can handle all of those difficult situations. And I'm not saying being to be a pessimist, but this idea that until you question anything, until I consider the possibility that I am wrong, I cannot be right. And I think by forcing the different viewpoints allows me to not get caught up in me lying to myself. I see so many people that would prefer the beautiful lie instead of the ugly truth.
Oh, yes, I agree. Very much so.
One of the things that most law of attraction teachers teach is the idea of attaching emotions.
Is it chocolate? Is it chocolate?
Well, that's what they're eating.
Being a person that has a sweet tooth, I'm thinking that somewhere in there you got to find chocolate. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
Actually, maybe we should just go get some chocolate and get our sweet in.
Hey, that's what I tell my boss and my coworkers on my substitute. If they want to bribe me to come work, they better bring chocolate with them.
Yeah, bring chocolate or go home. That's right. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
That's all right. But one of the things that law of attraction teachers teach is that you want to adopt the emotion of what it feels like to get where you want to go or attract what you want to attract before you attract it. So the question that comes to my mind is, when you were you realized you had that $10,000 in credit that was left to you, and you decided you were going to go all in with it. What was your feeling at that point compared to your feeling afterward? In other words, did you follow the typical model emotion-wise, or was it a different path?
I don't know. I think when I went all in, I think there was something inside me that made me feel like, well, at least if I fail, I will fail greatly. No, and I think there's something to be said in that. At least I stood I stood out there, because there was a beautiful quote about the timid souls who sit in the stands that weren't in the Colosseum. I think it was a Roosevelt quote, daring greatly. And so my reaction was, at least I dared greatly. At least, I gave it a shot. And so I remind people all the time. I'll stand somebody up when I'm teaching somebody, and they'll say, because they're saying to me they don't understand why they're not successful, and I'll say, okay, I want you to stand 6 feet from the wall in my office, and they'll stand 6 feet from the wall, and I say, okay, now guess what? That wall is the thing that you want to achieve. They said, really? I said, yeah. When you get to that wall, that means it's whatever you define success to be. They went, whoo, I'm only 6 feet away from success. I said, calm down. You're still 6 feet away from success. Okay? The hardest game to win is the one that's already won. Okay, so calm down. So now I'm going to allow you to keep moving towards that wall. Well, then, success is inevitable. I said, maybe. Here's the deal. I'm not going to allow you to take full steps. I'm only going to allow you to take half steps. So here's what I want you to do. You're 6 feet from the wall. You're allowed to move half the distance to the wall on every single step. Remember, you get to keep moving. How many steps will it take you to reach the wall? You will always be moving. The guy says, it'll take me 2 steps. I said, no. You get to travel 3 feet on your first step. He said, I got it. Well, now you only get to travel 1.5 feet. It doesn't take him very long that he was taking safe bets. He was only doing half steps. He was telling everybody he was running to second base, but he was keeping 1 foot on first. I see this time and time again with people who say, but I'm taking risks. No, you're not. You're taking half steps. And as long as you're taking half steps, you're gonna always be moving, but you're never going to get where you want to get.
So even if you're taking baby steps, they got to be full steps.
Right. Full baby steps. Woo!
Well, I take the word baby steps or the term baby steps because that's
I know what you mean. Yeah, absolutely.
And Mike Billy is a guy we like very much. He loves using that term, so that's why I pulled it out. But
there you go.
Yeah.
Work it.
Yeah. Yeah. This is all kinds of good stuff in these little, I'm not sure what to call them, these little stories that you share with us. It's really great. A couple things I want to ask you about. Your little resume on your website describes you, among other things, as a custom jewelry designer, which of course you were discussing.
Yeah.
And you list some of the custom pieces you've designed in the past.
Yeah.
Including a fully working Rubik's Cube encrusted with diamonds and a $200,000 gem prowler. I have no idea what that is.
It was actually a car made, I think, if my memory serves me correctly, I think Chrysler Plymouth made a car called the Prowler at one time. It was a purple car. It was a convertible. And they were bringing it out, and it was supposed to bring back the feeling of a jalopy, these really cool kind of 50s kind of hip kind of cars. And they were going to bring it out and stuff. And we were talking to these guys, and they said, hey, man, could we create a gem version of it? And, you know, maybe make it out of metal, a gold or platinum, whatever, and then put little amethyst on it. But we went further than that. We actually took a giant amethyst crystal and carved a model size, obviously to scale. It was about a little smaller than a shoebox. But this amethyst car out of one giant amethyst, and we put a diamond-encrusted wheels on it, and we put a diamond steering wheel and gold bucket seats with diamonds and stuff like that. And it was to honor the launch of this new car, and it kind of traveled the world and stuff. And then eventually, I'm not sure in which category, I think as one of the world's most expensive toys or something, it got into the Guinness Book of World Records in the year 2000.
Wow, that's something. And the Rubik's Cube, what's the story there?
It was the 15th anniversary of the Rubik's Cube. I was at home, and I saw it was like a VH1 or an MTV, and they were doing these flashbacks. Where were you in 1980 or something like that? And they were talking about it, how in 1980 there was all this craze for the Rubik's Cube. And I said to my wife, I said, you know, honey, no one ever did a gem version of that. All they did was plastic ones. Wouldn't that be cool if someone actually made one, like $1 million version of one, really used rubies, really used diamonds? And she says, Fred, I see that look on your face. I said, I just think it would be neat. So I called the company, Seven Towns Limited in London, who had the rights to the Rubik's Cube, and said, I got an idea. To honor the 15th anniversary of the Rubik's Cube, we make this thing. And then we also make some limited edition ones out of sterling silver. We sell them at the high-end toy stores. This thing tours all around the country. I think it could be big. And they went, I think it could be big too. And that's how that came about.
And what ultimately became of that Rubik's Cube?
Was sold. Eventually, the Sultan of Brunei owned it, and a bunch of other interesting people. Jay Leno joked about the Rubik's Cube once on the Tonight Show, and I was on the show a couple times and stuff. But it was eventually sold, and the tour happened. By the way, the 40th anniversary of the Rubik's Cube is coming up in a couple years, and that cube is actually going to tour along with a huge Rubik's exhibit on how the Rubik's Cube has changed the world.
Wow.
And it's going to be at the Liberty Science Center in New Jersey, and then it's going to tour all over the world through all the finest museums, the Louvre, and all the greatest museums in the world. And there's going to be a giant Rubik's Cube that's going to be floating over the Liberty Science Museum, and people with their iPhones will be able to virtually play and move the Rubik's Cube over the floating blimp above the Liberty Science Center and stuff. And Google is creating a website for all the interesting combinations and stuff like that. And but anyway, it was eventually sold, and then at some point, I was asked in an interview, what was the coolest thing that our company ever made? And I said, probably the world's most expensive toy, that Rubik's Cube. That was pretty cool. You know, we spent, thousands of hours making it. That was something. And then I started missing it. And then I decided I want it back. So I did whatever it took to get it back so that I owned it again. And then, because we weren't allowed to make a second one. It was a one-of-a-kind piece. It's called Rubik's Cube Masterpiece. Mm-hmm. And so I got it back. And then was going to donate it to the Smithsonian or something like that. And then that's when I got contacted a little over a year ago, maybe a little bit longer than that, that this big Rubik's exhibit was about to happen, and was the cube still in existence? Was it in a private collection? And I said, you're not going to believe this. I just bought this thing back. And they said, well, we want it to tour the world. We want it to be the keynote piece here. We're bringing Erno in from Budapest. And I had met him once before when we did the first tour. He says, but this tour is going to be bigger and more incredible and that kind of stuff. And so right now that cube is actually on loan, and it's at the Liberty Science Center right now under lock and key.
Wow. I have to admit, it's probably not a question you can answer, but I want to ask the founders of Rubik's Cube. They say that the Rubik's Cube has changed the world. I'm wondering how universal frustration has changed the world.
What they meant was life in many ways is a puzzle, and there's all these different combinations. Each one's pretty, each one's unique, but this idea that you've got this thing that you can rotate the combinations, it's like the movie The Matrix. It's almost like you're holding this little universe in your hand. You have some control over it, but yet it still frustrates you. You remember the story between the catfish and the cod?
I don't think I know that one.
I'll do the best I can to remember the story. The way I remember the story was, you had these people on the East Coast. There was a time when cod was just super popular. And word on the West Coast was, man, you got to get some of this cod. It's some of the flakiest, tastiest fish on the planet. And so when they heard this, they said, well, we got to get it from one coast to the other coast. So they said, well, let's freeze it, and we'll ship it over. When they shipped it over frozen, and then they cooked it, it was mushy. Had no taste, no flavor. It wasn't very good.
Yep.
So then they went, well, all right, that didn't work. Then they said, well, we got it. The key is you got to eat it. You got to catch it, and while it's still alive, then kill it, cook it, and then it'll be tasty. So they built these giant aquariums like on trains, and they put it via train, and they brought it all across. Now, when they got it back to the West Coast, they then cooked it up, and what they found was mushy fish. And they couldn't understand it. What was going on? They believed they'd actually created the same environment that was created before, but somehow something was missing. And then someone said, hey, I've done some research. It turns out that the catfish is the mortal enemy of the cod. I think we need to stick some catfish in there. I think these cod are getting lazy. And by the time they get over there with nothing to do, being bored, I think that's why they're so mushy and they're tasteless. I think we broke the imbalance. We need to keep the imbalance in there. They went, okay. So they threw catfish in there. And sure enough, those cod swam for their lives until they got to the other side. And you know what they had? Tasty, delicious cod. So when we get those things in our lives that frustrate us, that make us feel bad or annoy us, or the person who gives us those left-handed compliment, I think to myself, those are catfish people. And they're here just so that I can be tough enough and strong enough and on my toes enough. Otherwise, what's the point?
Very interesting. Very, very interesting. You got my brain going in 1,000 directions here, working that one out. Just like a Rubik's Cube, I guess.
Yeah, exactly.
Very cool. Louise unfortunately had to step away because she has a commitment she has to go meet. And we've kept you on the line here for quite some time.
Yeah, boy, the hour went by really quick.
Oh, it's been a lot of fun, though, I have to tell you. Thank you so much for joining us. Did you want to leave us with any last golden tidbit, or I should say diamond tidbit, before you leave?
Well, I think if we're going to talk about diamonds, I think one thing people need to understand is for years and years we've heard that diamonds are forever. They're not. Diamonds themselves really aren't that rare. There's lots and lots of diamonds out there, but very few of them are really good quality, what are called full-term rough or octahedron rough. And so what you're seeing now is this evolution that's going on in the diamond industry, similar to what happened to pearls 100 years ago. nobody wears a natural strand of pearls. They wear a strand of cultured pearls, which, Mikimoto came up with a process of taking a mother of pearl bead and inserting it in an oyster and creating them. Believe it or not, this is the golden decade for diamonds. And so the really good, no kidding, rare, rough diamonds are disappearing from our planet. This is probably the last decade of them, unless the prices go up so high that we can dig deeper and find more of them and stuff like that. So what I would tell people is most diamonds are cut from a very cheap rough and aren't that rare and aren't that valuable. But about 2%, what's called full-term rough, are really the rare stuff, the kind of the Picassos, the Van Goghs. And within the next probably 8 years, they're going to be gone off this planet. So if somebody really wanted to own a no-kidding, good diamond that's going to hold its value and appreciate value over time, probably this is the time to do it.
And from what you told us earlier in the interview, it's something where you don't want to just go out and just willy-nilly invest. You have to do what you did, basically. You have to learn it. You have to really learn it. You have to know and become an expert and know what you're talking about before you even try to purchase something like that.
And something else, too, for your listeners. We'd be more than glad to give your listeners some free copies of the How to Buy Diamond book. I'll get my publisher to give some out. I'm sure we can at least come up with 10 free copies. So if your listeners call in and give you their address, up to 10. We got to put a limit on it, up to 10.
Sure.
Then you give me those addresses. We'll make sure they get a free signed copy of the How to Buy a Diamond book, 7th edition.
Okay. So listeners, give us a contact through the website at loatoday.net, and we will pass the first 10 along to Fred. And Fred, for those who want to contact the company directly, how do they reach your company?
Oh, yeah, Joe. Diamond Cutters International. Our phone number is 1-800-275-4047. Or just go to Google, Diamond Cutters International, diamondcuttersintl.com, and you'll see there we are.
Fred, this has been so enjoyable. I want to thank you very, very much for joining us today. I know I've learned a lot. I hope our listeners have learned a lot, too. And plus, it's been tremendous fun. I mean, you just tell a great story. You really do. So thank you so much.
Well, I hope I'm never the catfish in your life.
Well, actually, from what you were telling us, maybe it's a good idea for you to be the catfish in our lives. I mean, sometimes we need to have that to keep us running, right?
Exactly. Someone to keep us on our toes.
That's right, yeah.
All righty.
That's the key to success, isn't it?
That's it. Don't be complacent.
We'll see you all next time here on LOA Today. Goodbye, everybody.